Welcome back to Season 2 of the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Menninger, and I am so grateful that you're joining us. When I started this podcast last year, my primary goal was to normalize the experience of imposter syndrome, to make it easier for us to talk about, and to access the support that we deserve. I am so grateful to everyone who has shared their stories with me, and I'm fascinated by the linkages between imposter syndrome and so many other facets of our lives. The conversations that we had last season led us in so many powerful directions. I'm excited to continue these conversations in Season 2. As always, if you have a story to share, please reach out to me. I would love to interview you. And if I can ever support you on your own imposter syndrome journey, I'd love to connect on that too. Thanks again for being here. All right. Good morning, Pattie. I am really excited to have this conversation with you today, and I'd love to kick us off by inviting you to share a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to be a part of your show because imposter syndrome, it's something that I know I've personally managed and taken on in my life, but also because I know so many people and so many women seem to be challenged by this. So I started out my career in a typical way. I wanted to make a difference in the world, so I thought I'd be a teacher. So I ended up going to college, graduating, and being a teacher. And then California passed a law where all new teachers got laid off. And so I ended up falling into banking, and I went from being a part-time teller in college to being vice president of customer and people excellence by the age of 28. So I was one of the youngest vice presidents for a big California bank. So started in banking, started my own company, had my company for about 10 years. In 1998, I got hired by Microsoft, and I was with Microsoft for over 15 years, managing their international divisions. I actually lived in Singapore for 3 years and ran their Asia Pacific enterprise team. Left Microsoft in 2013 and started my own business again. And so now I'm an author, speaker, trainer, coach. Been on a whole bunch of podcasts lately, which has just been a blast. So I'm really excited to be on this show. So I'm super passionate about empowering women and girls to be the best they could be in any endeavor they choose. And that's sort of what motivated me to be a part of your show.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited that you're here, and we'll dig into your background a little bit more as we move forward. I'd love to start by asking you the question I generally ask everyone, which is, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? And then by extension, how, if at all, has it shown up for you? You mentioned that it's something that you have had some experience with, or certainly have seen in others. What does it mean to you, and where do you see it?
Imposter syndrome is really interesting because to me it's and it seems to affect women and girls more than boys. And I think it comes from how we're raised to always be the good girl. We're always going to be the good girl. We're going to get the good grades. We're going to go to the good schools. We're going to get the good jobs. We're going to be the good moms and the good team players and the good managers and all these things. And so imposter syndrome to me really is sort of a twist on perfectionism. I think it comes from us wanting to always be perfect. And I love to look up what words mean and definitions. So I kind of started digging into this imposter syndrome and perfectionism. And perfectionism is actually defined as a personality trait that's characterized by someone with really high standards. In combination with these high standards, they also are overly self-critical, feeling they're not good enough, combined with caring too much about what other people think. And that is such a powerful definition for me that it's we've got really high standards as women. We want to be perfect. We want to be the perfect wife, mom, team player, manager, student, whatever our endeavor is. But these high standards of what that is many times holding us back and preventing us from really going for the jobs and the careers and the things that we really want. And it's really affected me probably a couple times in my life. The first time it probably happened to me when I was in the banking world and I had just been made vice president by the bank I was working for in California, because I'm located in California. And I'm at this big meeting with all these really, really important people, and 99% of them are men in gray suits or blue suits with white shirts and ties. And I'm in this room feeling I don't belong here. And I remember my confidence being shattered for a short period of time because I was working for a really abusive boss also at the same time, and wondering, was I really good enough? And then I woke up one day and I realized I am good enough. I earned this job. I worked hard for this. I went to the right schools. I did the good girl things, and I earned this job. So I really deserved it. So that's probably my first experience with it. Um, and a friend told me when I was working for this abusive boss, and this is a man that when I made vice president, he went by my office screaming at the top of his lungs, "Grimm, you really screwed up this time," yelling and screaming in front of my staff, in front of the whole team, the whole organization. He pulled me inside the office, grabbed me by my coat, and said, "Congratulations, you just made VP." So he had isn't that awful? Um, and he did this to people on the whole team. There were 5 of us who reported to him, and he would pick a day. So Monday would be your day, Kim. Tuesday's my day. Wednesday would be Sally's. Next day would be John, somebody else's. And he would abuse people to shatter their confidence and create that imposter syndrome in people. And a friend of mine said to me one day, and this is what snapped me out of it the first time, she said, people who do that to others have a combination of a very big ego with a low self-esteem, and the only way they feel the only way they feel good, is to make others feel bad. And that comment to me was like, I am good enough. I earned this job. I can really do this. So that was one time.
Yeah, and what you're describing a really toxic combination of factors in that particular environment, and I'm sure it's relatable to a lot of people listening too. Certainly just getting promoted to a big role, being in a room full of men, so you're even more aware of your own differences and that lack of belonging, having an abusive boss. I think other people's insecurities are such a trigger of this too, because we are so sensitive to other people, like you said in the perfectionism description, right? We're so dependent on other people's feedback. And when you are surrounded by people who have big egos and a lot of insecurity, what they're putting off, we are personalizing, but it's really not about us. It's about them.
Yeah. And so that was sort of one example. And I think another one just came from the fact of, I actually turned it around. So I remember being in one of those big meetings about 6 months later, and I had worked so hard to get this promotion, and really believed and knew that I deserved it. So I was in another one of those big meetings in downtown Los Angeles, and it was all men in the meeting, and we'd been in the meeting for about 2.5 hours with no break, and I had to go to the bathroom. And so I started to get up to go to the bathroom, and one of these gentlemen, who my friend in Senator Hannah Jackson refers to the men in Congress all as the men as being male, stale, and pale, right? So I was in this meeting with all these men, and I started to get up to go to the bathroom, and one of the guys said, "Where are you going, young lady?" Because I was obviously a lot younger than most of them as well. I said, "I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be back in about 2 minutes." He says, "Well, we don't take breaks in these meetings because we don't want to break the momentum we have going." And I said, "Well, you have 2 choices. I can pee on this floor, or I could go to the bathroom. Now it's your choice." And I walked out the room, and I remember closing the door, and I walked out the room and closing the door and like taking that deep breath going, did I really say that?
Wow. And what was their response?
I think they were shocked. And then several of them got up and went to the bathroom too.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And I think we all have this imposter syndrome that we're constantly trying to battle with and manage.
I agree. And I don't know that we don't all know it to be imposter syndrome. I think I'm still always surprised by how many people are not familiar with that term. But I do think, like I said, and like you were talking about earlier, right, that insecurity is at the root of what so many of us in the workplace are experiencing. And I've been joking a lot lately about the workplace triggering our inner 7th grader. And so for me, 7th grade was just the worst year of my academic life, that time in middle school when you're trying to fit in and you are trying to assess the landscape and determine what's acceptable to say and do so that people like you. And I feel like that just gets so triggered in the workplace when we are trying to interact with people who we look around and see as having more expertise than we do, having greater tenure than we do, more power than we do. And so it really triggers us in these very primitive ways. And that often shows up in the form of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and it's the I really think it starts when we're little girls, like you said, 7th grade or even younger, when we're trying to say, am I good enough? Where do I fit in? What group do I want to be part of? And I think the thing I want most women to, or all women to understand is I think we need to figure out how we collaborate and help each other and not compete. And how we can support each other and not sabotage. So it's great for me to, when we were both on the Witty, first Witty conference, we were both speakers and a part of that. And I sat in on your session in the morning and you were amazing. I mean, I have to say, I was taking notes constantly. And I think I even had it set up on my computer where I could take like a snippet of something you were saying.
Well, thank you.
It was so great. And I can look at that and say, wow, isn't that great? Because Kim did such a great job. And I think even when I did my session later in the day, I referred back to something that you said and said, so I was trying to support, not sabotage, and trying to collaborate and not compete, so that we can just strive to be good and strive to be excellent, but not for perfectionism, because it's impossible. You'll always have imposter syndrome if you're always trying to be perfect. So we just have to let it go. I mean, sing the song from Frozen. Just let it go.
You're absolutely right. And because you mentioned that, I know this comes up a lot when I speak, when I interact with women individually, this idea of women being harder on each other than sometimes men are on women and what we can do about it. And, since you've been in senior level positions in your role, what would you say to somebody who brings that up? I mean, what do we do about that?
I think we have to be more value. So in my book, Quiet Women Never Change History, Be Strong, Stand Up, the subtitle is Let's Go Kick Some Glass, and we'll put something in the show notes about this. But in my book and the research I did, I spent 3 years interviewing over 3,200 people, men and women, about what makes great women leaders. And the interesting thing, one of the things the men were telling me is one of the things that holds women back is that we sabotage each other. We don't support each other, that we put other women down, just like you said. And we have to reverse that thinking. We have to be willing to recognize it's not a limited pie of the world. It's limitless. Women's pay has only gone up 1% in the last decade, and they say we won't reach pay parity until the year 2277. So we have to do some things very radical to start supporting other women, and even simple things. For example, if you're in a meeting and you say something brilliant and it doesn't get heard, or worse yet, you say something brilliant and then a man across the room says the same thing and his talk gets heard. We need to be more valuable, we need to be more visible, and we need to be more vocal. So we need to be willing to say, wait a minute, I don't think you heard me. Or I, as the other woman in the room, should say, I think Kim had a great idea. Can you tell us more about that, Kim? So we're supporting each other in a very visual, verbal, vocal way. I want women to keep an accomplishment list. I think you might have even said this in your session as well. Mm-hmm. At the end of each week or at the end of each day, whatever time works for you, keep a list of all the things that you've done. Every time you get a compliment letter from a customer or a team member or somebody, keep a file. And it gives you all this, it does two things for you. It gives you evidence when you go to apply for that job or promotion that you know you deserve. You've got all these facts with you. And it helps you when you have to go to your company still doing performance reviews. You still have all that data from an entire year and you're not sitting there staring at your computer when they say, well, tell me what you think you did this year. So keep that accomplishment file, and it just makes you feel good. If you're having a bad day, you're having that 7th grade moment, Go look at that file.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really good point. And I think going back to also what you were talking about, that scarcity mindset, right? That in order for somebody else to win, I need to lose, that I am somehow threatened by someone else's success is a really powerful part of the equation here too. And I think that's how we've all been conditioned to think. And even I've been thinking a lot about this too, in the context of self-promotion and what you're talking about too, and even in terms of idea sharing, is how often I'll be asked the question, well, what if I'm sharing generously my ideas, my work, and someone else takes credit for them? That's obviously a concern, and it happens, but I think it reinforces that scarcity mindset that I have this limited amount of opportunity, and if somebody takes what's mine, that I'm not going to get to where I want to go. And so we end up fighting with each other instead of collaborating and coming from a place of abundance where there's opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, instead of having that scarcity mindset, think about having a growth mindset, which is also very popular right now, about that the world is full of opportunities. And while this one may not work out for me and it works out for you, that's okay, because next time maybe it's my turn. And if somebody consistently is taking your ideas, I think that's also a time to be bold and brave and maybe approach that person, maybe not in the meeting, but after the meeting, say, I noticed lately that a lot of times I'll say something and then I'll hear you say it again. I feel uncomfortable with the way you're approaching this. And so I think we have to be that bold, brave person that's willing to stand up for ourselves and stand up for others. And I was been noodling around with another title, and one of them is just because of all this kind of scarcity mentality, and that many times right now men are feeling threatened in some cases because of things going on around them, that the title was going to be something like "When She Rises, He Does Not Fall: How to Create an Inclusive Workplace for All." So how do we open up this world and say there's more than enough opportunities if we just collaborate versus compete?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the competition piece of it is similar in some respects to the comparison piece that we're talking about too, of you look around and you see this other person and you think, I'm not as good as that person is. I don't have the same experience. That person's so much smarter or so much more accomplished than I am. And we end up getting stuck there in our minds, and we forget about all the great value that we have to bring. We forget about why we're in the room in the first place. And I think that speaks to your other point about really keeping track of it, because we do take all of that for granted. We don't spend enough time pausing and celebrating what we're doing well. We're so tuned into how we feel like we're not measuring up.
Yeah, and it's pretty typical for most women. If they do a great presentation or they do something really well on a project, and someone comes up and says, "Kim, that was great," what do most women do? Well, right? We'll say, "Oh, well, I should have done this and I could have done that." And so we start self-criticizing again. And we also, that person just gave you a compliment, which is a gift or a present. And now you've taken that present away because now you're putting down their opinion when they said, "Hey, that was great." You go, "Oh, well, wasn't that good?"
Exactly.
So we have to stop doing that and just learn to say thank you.
That's right. I always say thank you as a full sentence. And you're absolutely right? Someone's giving you a gift and you're throwing it in the trash. I mean, what does that say about you and how you feel about the other person?
Yeah, and another time I think I went through the imposter syndrome, and we all go through it, and it's there. It's that wanting to be liked, wanting to be good enough. When I first took the job in Singapore to run the Asia Pacific region, I walk into the headquarters office the first day, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I fit in, and how do I try and be like all these other people? And I had a really great British gentleman named Oliver, who was my mentor and sponsor, and helped me get on the Executive Potential Program and did some wonderful things for my career. He was just an amazing coach. And he brought me into his office one day and he said, "Are you happy?" Now, when your boss or your mentor asks you that question, my first question was, my answer was, "Well, I thought I was happy till you asked me that question." said, well, yeah, I'm happy. He says, well, what I notice is I feel like you're trying to fit in with everybody else. And that's not why I hired you. That's not why I'm mentoring you. That's not why I brought you here. I want you to be you, because that's the person that I need on the team. I don't need somebody like me. I don't need somebody who looks like everybody else. I want you to be you. Just be, and it's okay. And
Wow.
he helped me in so many ways. So another way to overcome your imposter syndrome is to just be less self-critical, but also find someone who lifts you up, who says that was really good. That was a great thing you did.
Can you imagine what the workplace would look like if we had more managers delivering that message to the people on their teams? That's incredible. I mean, what a contrast with the abusive boss that you described earlier.
Yeah, so it was just a complete opposite. And it was one of the first times I was going to go make a presentation in front of all the country managers. So there's like 20 country managers in this first big meeting. And I'm sitting in the back of the room waiting to get up and do my presentation. And my laptop crashed. It literally crashed. So my PowerPoint's gone. My notes are gone. Everything's gone. And I just got up and started to talk, and just started to engage them and ask their opinions and what's working and what's not working. And at the end, I got like a standing ovation because it was the best presentation they'd had, because they were getting killed by death by PowerPoint by everybody else. And I was just being authentic and genuine. So be your authentic, genuine self, and recognize that we all have strengths. One of the first principles in my 5 ways to be an empowered woman leader is play to your strengths. So fine-tune your strengths, play to your strengths, play those up. Find people around you that maybe don't have different strengths than you do, so you have that diversity on your team. But recognize and say, you know what? I'm not perfect, because I heard a study one time that said leaders who appear too perfect aren't trusted. Because people think they're wearing a mask and they're not being authentic and genuine.
That's very true. Yes. We are very suspicious of people who seem a little too good to be true. Right?
Well, and I will guarantee you could pick any movie star, any rock star, any person you see, athletics, music, whatever. You could pick any one of these people that we all think are perfect. And I guarantee you there's something in the back of their mind that says, I'm not good enough too, or I could be taller, thinner, have better clothes, better this, better that, better job, better life. Just celebrate who you are and what you bring to the world.
That's one of the big reasons why you and I are having this conversation today. And the reason why I started this podcast is because we are all so afraid to admit that the road isn't perfect, that we don't have it all figured out. And so we send a message to the people that are coming up behind us that we are somehow super women or super people who have this really golden path, and that if you're not on that track, if you aren't perfect, that you're somehow flawed or deficient in some way, when you're absolutely right. In reality, if you talk to any successful person, they've all been here. They've all had a rocky road. They've all had their share of insecurities and self-doubt. And so let's talk about that. Let's stop pretending and make sure that people realize that self-doubt and insecurity are part of the process. They're not flaws in our systems or in our approaches to this. So that's my perspective on it.
And I love the work of Dr. Susan David. I don't know if you've seen her work or her TED Talk on emotional agility.
No.
Her book is called Emotional Agility: How to Thrive, how to get unstuck and thrive through life and embrace all these things. So the concept of emotional agility, and I love this combined with emotional intelligence, which emotional intelligence is having the ability, which I think most people know what it is, but having the ability to have self-awareness, other awareness, style flexibility, the ability to see things and adjust to those, right? So they've shown that people with emotional intelligence do better in life than people that have super high IQs with low EQs. Her concept is emotional agility. So having the ability to see the world as it is with an open mind, with an open heart, and being able to navigate through life's ups and downs and twists and turns in a way that we say, sometimes we're just having a bad day or a bad week, or right now, 2020, we're having a bad year for many people. I hear so many things where people say, well, that was a 2020 event, or that was, I'm having a 2020 day or something. But to not try and push all those things down, which can lead to depression and people shutting down, which is the worst thing you could do, is to embrace it for a little while, to learn from it, to discover from it, to have that ability to live life to its fullest. If you have a life full and you were to look at like an EKG, it goes up and down, you were to look at a heartbeat, there's ups and there's downs and there's highs and there's lows. And one of the things that Susan David says in her TED Talk is if you want your life to be completely flat, and in some cases perfect, you don't want life to be completely flat, you're a flatliner. And that means you have dead people's goals.
Yeah.
The secret to life isn't, saying I'm going to retire and go live on a farm in Kansas or something, or some beautiful place, or whatever you want to do. It's about living life to its fullest in its frailty and appreciating the ups and downs and learning from all of them. So when something doesn't go well, ask yourself what happened, why did it happen? What did I learn from it? And what would I do differently next time to create a different result? So what would I do differently next time to create a different result? When you're having one of those down moments, what can you do differently? When something goes well, ask yourself what happened? Why did it happen? What did I learn from it? And what would I do again to create a similar result? So if you nailed that presentation or you nailed that project, how are you going to nail the next one so that you're striving for excellence and you're getting better? But give up on perfectionism. Just give up on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you're saying too about really paying attention to what the factors were that influenced something that you perceive to have gone well and something that you perceive to have not gone well. I can have a tendency, as somebody who has struggled with anxiety for most of my life, to get very stuck in my thoughts if I allow myself to. And that's been something that's been really helpful for me, is to, if I'm going to be in my thoughts, to at least do it productively, right? Instead of ruminating and playing over and over again all the things I think I did poorly or the things I said that I shouldn't have said, to instead apply that framework of, okay, well, what am I going to do differently going forward? And where do I go from here? And I have found that to at least be something good that can come out of a dark process sometimes.
Yeah. And also the idea of being able to say, instead of saying, I'm feeling stressed today, or I'm feeling anxious today, just simply say, I'm noticing I'm feeling stressed or anxious today. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what happened here, and what do I do, or how can I get myself back to a place where I can be more productive or happier or less stressed or less anxious? What are the things, what are the things that trigger you?
Yeah. I like that. I'm all about curiosity, all about taking a curiosity-based approach. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's more like detective work than it is emotional struggle, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like you're going, isn't that interesting? It's like you walk into a room and you go, why did I walk in this room? What was I going to go do? So you try to retrace your steps and find out how you got there, and being just aware of things. I mean, I know I now make a joke about it because I happen to be someone that I'm a very visionary, big pictures from a disc perspective. I'm the driver, influencer, very low on the detail side of things. And so I used to freak out if I was doing a presentation and I had a typo, right? I used the word to, T-O, instead of the word TOO or something in a slide. So now I sort of make a joke about it, which I think makes people feel that you're more authentic. And I just sort of say, if you find a typo in one of these slides, I'll give you a copy of my book, right? Just email me after, I'll send you whatever. And how many times have I actually been reading someone else's book and I actually find a typo, or you find a typo in the newspaper, an article or something someone posts. Instead of being critical, go, I guess they were being genuine today. You kind of go, oh, well.
We're all human, right? There's no such thing as perfection.
Just get back to the fact that people don't, if you look like you're so perfect, people think it's they don't trust you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So what motivated you to want to be here today and to tell your story? What are you hoping people will take away from this conversation?
A couple of things. So I will share a quick snippet of a story. I actually have something called a Sue Talk, which is a TED Talk for women. And Sue stands for super unstoppable, empowered women changing the world, is what Sue actually stands for. And I talked about failing forward with vision, and that when there was a point in my career at Microsoft where I went from rock star to rock bottom. And I hit that spot where I was depressed and anxiety and gained 35 pounds and my hair was falling out. And I went from loving my job every day to dragging myself out of bed and putting on the happy face so I could be the positive Pattie at work that everybody expected me to be. And it almost killed me. I literally was sitting in a doctor's office who said if I didn't take a sabbatical, I'd be dead in 6 months. So that's kind of the rock bottom. Sitting on your bathroom floor crying, trying to figure out how to get up and put on that happy face to go to work that day. And I did that for a long time because I was playing everybody else's rules. I wasn't playing my game. I was playing their game. And I was trying to be everything for everybody. And I was doing that perfectionism and had huge imposter syndrome that I wasn't good enough. I didn't deserve everything I'd gotten. So I really hit rock bottom. And at one of those moments, I remember walking through the forest with my dogs. I have 2 pugs, Mango and Roxy, and walking through the forest with a headset on, playing music like This Girl Is on Fire and What Doesn't Kill You Make You Stronger, and just trying to get myself up again. And so that bottom moment inspired me to then dedicate my business and my life to my mission of empowering women and girls to be the best they could be in any endeavor they choose. So that inspired me to write my book. That inspires me to do the podcasts I'm doing, the interviews, the presentations. My business is all around empowering women and girls, because I didn't want another woman to go through what I went through, or to recognize when they started to feel they were falling down that cliff, to catch themselves sooner. So I spent that time researching, as I mentioned earlier, all these women and men about what makes great women leaders, and came up with these 5 ways to be a strong, empowered woman leader. And I just wanted to share that with the world. And so that sort of inspired me. And I know so many women suffer from imposter syndrome. And Kim, I want to leave the world a better place. I don't want my daughter and granddaughters in the future to have to work so hard to be seen as equal. I want us to, this is our 100th year of the right to vote, and we're still fighting and trying to crash that glass ceiling. I wanted to leave the world a better place for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. So I have so much hope for the new generations coming up, whether they're millennials or Gen Zers or whatever we're going to call the next generation. I want to leave the world a better place.
Thank you so much, Pattie. I'm really inspired by what you just said, and I'm really grateful to you for sharing so honestly and personally about your own story and how it got you here. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and we will definitely include information about your book and how to get in touch with you in the show notes.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun, Kim. It's been really great. It's so wonderful to see you again.
I know. I'm so glad that we're staying in touch. It was great to meet you, and looking forward to staying connected in the future as well.
When we're on 2 completely different sides of the planet. I'm sitting outside Palm Springs, California, where it's going to be down to 110 today.
Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah, definitely not the same experience as here in the Boston area. Well, thanks again, Pattie.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening today. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome and you'd like additional support, check out the show notes for more resources or contact me directly. I would love to help you. And if you'd like to tell your story, I would love to interview you. You will find my contact info in the show notes, so reach out anytime. Thanks again.